I still remember that night as if it were etched into my soul. The moment when I finally reached the breaking point. I was in the kitchen, hands trembling from the day's endless chores, when my husband, Alex, barked for me to bring him tea. His voice, cold and imperious, cut through the clatter of dishes like a knife through paper. I had been treated like a ghost in my own home for so long, my efforts mocked, and my very existence reduced to a series of commands and insults. That evening, as I stood there with suds on my fingers and a heart heavy with silent despair, something inside me shifted irrevocably. I am Alara, a 28-year-old working mother who once believed in love and partnership. I married Alex when I was 23, dreaming of a life filled with warmth and understanding. Instead, I found myself trapped in a relentless cycle of degradation and isolation, living under the same oppressive roof as Alex and his domineering mother, Mrs. Whitmore. At first, I had hoped that taking care of Mrs. Whitmore, after my father-in-law had passed away, would bring our family closer together. But as the days turned into years, it became all too clear. I was nothing more than a servant, a scapegoat for every mistake, a silent victim of their constant cruelty. That night in the kitchen, I was scrubbing a pile of dishes when Alex's voice sliced through my thoughts. "Alara, get me the tea now," he demanded, his tone laced with impatience and a hint of disdain. I hesitated, my heart pounding as I mumbled an apology. My hands shook, not just from the physical exertion, but from the years of being belittled, the sting of each casual insult that had accumulated like rust on my soul. I moved mechanically, my mind numb as I poured hot water into a chipped mug, all the while feeling the weight of every unspoken word and every hurtful remark. The atmosphere in our home was always charged with tension. Even at the dinner table where I had once imagined sharing laughter and stories, there was only the constant barrage of sarcastic comments and cutting criticisms. I recalled one particularly painful moment when Alex, with a sneer on his face, said, "You're a useless wife. You can't even do the simplest thing without messing it up." His words echoed in my mind long after the sound of clinking cutlery had faded. My son, Sam, then only 4, would watch silently, his eyes wide and full of confusion, unable to comprehend why the woman who should have been his protector was always so broken. I began to document every slight, a whispered insult here, a demeaning order there, storing them away in the recesses of my mind like forbidden secrets. Each day, I gathered evidence of their emotional abuse, the harsh tones, the dismissive gestures, and the deliberate efforts to erase my very identity. I recorded angry exchanges on my phone, jotted down dates and details in a worn-out notebook, and secretly captured moments on a hidden camera. The more I chronicled, the clearer it became that my life was not just unhappy. It was dangerous for my spirit and for Sam's future. One particular incident still haunts me. It was a cold, rain-soaked evening. I had come home exhausted from a long day at work, and the damp chill had seeped into my bones. I decided to cook a comforting meal, mapo tofu, fried chicken, and a stir-fry with bell peppers and pork, in a desperate attempt to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. As I carefully plated the food, trying to infuse warmth into each dish, Alex's voice rang out unexpectedly, "Bring me the mayo." I paused, holding the jar in my hand, the simple act suddenly charged with a bitter significance. When I obeyed, his first words were not of thanks, but another cold command. The tension exploded when Mrs. Whitmore, sitting in the living room with a slice of cake in hand, demanded in a voice dripping with contempt, "Clean the toilet right now!" I felt a surge of anger and humiliation welling up inside me, emotions I had long suppressed in the name of obedience. In that moment, I realized that I was standing at the edge of an abyss. The years of subjugation, the daily grind of endless chores, and the constant belittlement had eroded every ounce of my self-worth. I could no longer bear to be invisible in my own home. The hurt and anger mingled with a newfound clarity, a determination that I would no longer let them define me. I was not merely a shadow haunting the halls of our house. I was a person with dreams, hopes, and a right to live with dignity. The turning point came not in a blaze of grand gestures, but in a quiet, defiant moment in my modest bedroom. I sat on the edge of my unmade bed, the glow of my computer screen illuminating a path to freedom. I opened a new document and began typing out my thoughts, my fears, my hopes, and my plan for escape. I had spent years meticulously gathering evidence, every insulting word, every act of financial manipulation, every moment that confirmed their complete disregard for me. With trembling fingers, I downloaded the divorce papers, a simple act that symbolized the start of my liberation. I signed them with a resolve that surprised even me, and placed them on the kitchen table like a silent declaration of war. The next few days were a whirlwind of frigid stares, icy stares, and stinging remarks. Alex, in a rare moment of vulnerability, asked, "Alara, have you thought about how you'll survive after the divorce? You can barely keep a house, let alone your own life." His words, meant to undermine me, instead fueled the fire within. I met his gaze steadily and replied, "I have been supporting this family for years, and I know I can take care of myself and Sam." That simple assertion was like a spark that ignited the dam of my pent-up rage. I was no longer willing to be a pawn in their twisted game of power and control. As the days passed, the tension in the house became almost unbearable. Mrs. Whitmore alternated between sweet talk and venomous insults, trying desperately to coerce me into staying. "We are family, Alara," she would say, her tone mocking. "You need us more than we need you." But the truth was painfully clear. Without my salary, their carefully constructed world would crumble. I could hear their whispered conversations, the planning of my downfall, as they plotted to make my life so unbearable that I would never dare leave. Their focus on financial dependency, on controlling every aspect of my existence, only reinforced my determination to break free. I began reaching out for help in secret. I connected with a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer named Jessica, whose eyes shone with fierce determination when she agreed to take my case. In quiet meetings at a small, downtown law office, Jessica reassured me, "We're going to expose every lie they've told. You deserve a life without fear." Those words, spoken in a calm yet resolute tone, filled me with a strength I had long forgotten. Alongside Jessica, I found solace in an online support group of survivors, where strangers' stories of overcoming abuse resonated deeply with me. Every message, every hashtag like "Break the Chains," reminded me that I was not alone, that there were others who had risen above the darkness. I also started to involve more people around me. A kind neighbor, Rachel, who had noticed my quiet suffering over the years, began to offer small acts of kindness, a warm meal, a listening ear, even discreet advice on standing up for myself. During one hushed conversation in the hallway of our apartment building, Rachel said softly, "Alara, you deserve so much more than this. I see the strength in you even when you try to hide it." Those words, gentle yet profound, were a balm to my wounded heart, urging me to take the next step towards freedom. The most harrowing confrontation came one stormy night when the tension in our home reached its peak. I had just finished a late dinner, the remnants of a meal that I had poured my heart into, when the air grew thick with unspoken malice. In the midst of the chaos, Alex, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and desperation, shouted, "Alara, how can you say such things? I've always been here for you." His words, laced with a bitter irony, only deepened the chasm between us. I could see in his eyes a flicker of fear of losing control, of facing the consequences of his actions. But there was no turning back for me. I stood up slowly, the room seeming to shrink around me as I declared, "I am done being your scapegoat. I will no longer be invisible." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room, Sam's wide, confused gaze, Mrs. Whitmore's sneering look, even Alex's crumbling facade, fixed on me as if I had suddenly become the sole center of the universe. In that charged moment, I felt an overwhelming mix of terror and exhilaration. The fear of the unknown battled with the liberating rush of finally reclaiming my identity. Every insult, every demeaning order, every dismissive gesture from the past came crashing down around me, fueling a resolve that was as pure as it was fierce. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, not from panic, but from the certainty that I was about to shatter the chains that had bound me for so long. The days that followed were a blur of whispered threats and cold, calculated maneuvers. Mrs. Whitmore, desperate to maintain her grip on our family, tried every tactic in her arsenal. Sweet words, hollow promises, and even a feigned display of concern. "Alara, think of Sam," she would say, in a tone that dripped with insincerity. Yet, every time she spoke, I could sense the underlying contempt, the cold calculation that had defined her entire existence. Alex, on the other hand, oscillated between anger and a strange, pitiable remorse. One afternoon, as I was tidying up the living room, a task that once filled me with dread, he approached hesitantly. His eyes, usually so hard and unyielding, were clouded with uncertainty. "Alara, I'm sorry for everything," he murmured, barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. I met his gaze with a steady, unwavering look and replied, "I'm not here to collect apologies. I'm here to reclaim my life." His silence that followed was more telling than any words he might have uttered. I spent countless nights poring over documents, piecing together every instance of abuse, every financial irregularity, every moment that confirmed my worth and their manipulative control. The evidence was damning. A collection of bank statements, text messages, audio recordings, and even photographs that captured the hidden moments of their cruelty. Each piece of evidence was a testament to the years I had suffered in silence, and each one bolstered my determination to break free completely. The courtroom became the stage for our final reckoning. The day of the hearing was overcast, the sky a dull gray that seemed to mirror the somber mood inside. I sat in the witness box, my hands folded tightly in my lap, my heart racing as I awaited my turn to speak. Across the room, Alex and Mrs. Whitmore maintained their carefully constructed masks of innocence, though I could see the cracks beginning to show. My lawyer, Jessica, stood by my side, a pillar of strength in a sea of uncertainty. As the proceedings began, I recounted every moment of my suffering with a calm clarity that surprised even me. I spoke of the countless times I had been belittled, of the relentless pressure to conform to a role that was never mine, and of the unyielding determination that had grown inside me over the years. When it came time to present the evidence, Jessica's voice rang out, steady and authoritative, as she laid bare the truth. The projector illuminated images that no one in that courtroom could ignore. Snapshots of Alex in compromising situations, the damning audio recordings of Mrs. Whitmore's venomous tirades, and the financial documents that revealed a hidden dependency on my income. Gasps rippled through the room as the irrefutable evidence was displayed. And in that moment, the facade of control that had defined our lives began to crumble. I could feel a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. Vindication that the truth was finally out, and sorrow for the years of suffering that had led to this point. The judge's words, when they finally came, were a lifeline. Full custody of Sam was awarded to me, and a fair division of assets was decreed. In that courtroom, I had not only reclaimed my voice, but I had shattered the chains of oppression that had bound me for so long. As I walked out of the courtroom, the cool air on my face felt like a promise of new beginnings, a promise that I was free to rebuild my life on my own terms. I remember the moment most vividly. Sam, with tears in his eyes and a smile that belied the pain of the past, ran into my arms and whispered, "We did it, Mom." In that embrace, I felt the weight of every insult, every harsh word, and every moment of despair lift from my shoulders. I had finally stepped out of the shadows and into a future that I had fought so hard to claim. In the days and weeks that followed, the aftermath of the trial rippled through our small community. Whispers of our family's downfall spread like wildfire, and the carefully maintained reputations of Alex and Mrs. Whitmore lay in tatters. I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece, taking small steps that, together, formed a new path. I enrolled in community college, determined to reclaim not just my financial independence, but also the dreams I had long abandoned. I attended support group meetings, where I met others who had weathered similar storms and emerged stronger, and I discovered a surprising sense of joy in the simplest moments. A warm cup of coffee with a newfound friend, a quiet walk in the park, or a shared smile with someone who understood the journey of overcoming. Through it all, I continued to document my journey, not as a means of revenge, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I started writing, pouring my heart into journals and online posts, hoping that my story might one day serve as a beacon of hope for someone else trapped in a cycle of abuse. Each word, each carefully crafted sentence, was a declaration of my worth, a promise to never again let anyone diminish the light within me. There were still days when the memories would come unbidden, a harsh word recalled in a quiet moment, a fleeting image of Alex's cold stare, or the echo of Mrs. Whitmore's laughter in an empty room. Yet, with each passing day, those memories lost a little of their power. I learned to see them not as chains that bound me to a dark past, but as stepping stones that had led me to this newfound freedom. I met new people who added color and warmth to my world. One of them was Daniel, a kind and thoughtful neighbor who had recently moved into the apartment complex. His gentle humor and genuine interest in my well-being reminded me that there was life beyond the confines of my old world. During long walks along the tree-lined streets of our neighborhood, Daniel and I would talk about our dreams and the possibility of a future filled with hope rather than despair. His presence, though soft-spoken, became a quiet reassurance that I was not defined solely by the pain I had endured. One rainy afternoon, as I sat by the window watching droplets trace patterns on the glass, Daniel joined me with 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Alara," he said softly, "I know things have been incredibly hard for you, but you have a strength in you that shines through even on the darkest days. You deserve to be happy." His words, sincere and gentle, resonated deeply within me. I realized that while the scars of the past might never fully fade, they no longer had to dictate the course of my future. I could choose to heal, to love, and to live freely. As I reflect on the journey that brought me to this point, I understand that my struggle was not just for my own freedom, but for the freedom of every soul who has ever been made to feel small and unworthy. The battle was long and fraught with pain, yet it was also a journey of self-discovery, a journey that taught me that true liberation begins with recognizing one's own worth. I have come to see that the greatest victory lies not in revenge, but in the quiet triumph of reclaiming one's life, step by determined step. Now, as I look ahead to the horizon, I carry with me the lessons of my past and the promise of a brighter future. I am no longer the invisible woman who once toiled in silence. I am a survivor, a fighter, and above all, a mother who will do anything to protect her child. Every morning, as the sun rises and bathes the world in a gentle glow, I am reminded that each day is a new opportunity, a chance to rewrite my story with courage, compassion, and an unwavering belief in the power of transformation. The journey is far from over, and there will undoubtedly be more challenges to face. Yet, I stand here today, with my heart open to the possibilities that lie ahead, confident in the knowledge that I have the strength to overcome whatever obstacles may come my way. My story, once shrouded in darkness and despair, now unfolds as a testament to resilience and hope, a beacon for anyone who dares to dream of a life beyond the confines of fear and oppression. In the quiet moments of the night, when I find myself alone with my thoughts, I sometimes trace the lines of my past like scars on my soul. But I no longer see them as marks of defeat. Instead, they are reminders of the battles I have fought and won. Each memory, no matter how painful, has contributed to the person I am today. A person who has learned that true freedom lies in the courage to stand up for oneself, even when the odds seem insurmountable. I continue to write my story, not for the sake of others' validation, but as a promise to myself that I will never again allow anyone to steal my light. With every word I pen, I reclaim a piece of the strength that had been buried beneath years of silence. And as I do, I can feel the chains of the past breaking away, leaving behind a future filled with possibility, love, and the gentle assurance that I am, at last, truly free. I remember the day I stepped out of that courtroom like it was yesterday, even though it had been weeks since the verdict. The gray skies that morning had mirrored the weight I carried inside. But as I walked out with Sam's hand tightly in mine, I felt something shift. A quiet certainty that my life was finally mine again. I moved into a small, modest apartment on the edge of town, a place that smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and every creaking floorboard reminded me that I was free to rewrite my own story. The early days were both exhilarating and terrifying. I spent long hours setting up our new home, carefully choosing every piece of furniture and every color on the walls, trying to fill the empty spaces with memories of hope instead of despair. Sometimes, when the silence of the apartment grew too heavy, I would sit in the corner of our living room and think back to the countless nights I had spent feeling invisible. I remembered the way Alex's voice used to echo off the cold tiles, how Mrs. Whitmore's sneers would cut deeper than any knife. Those memories, once like chains around my heart, now served as reminders of what I had escaped and why I had to keep moving forward. Every morning, I woke up early to the soft light of dawn filtering through the window. I would make a quiet cup of coffee and sit by the small kitchen table, planning the day ahead. Sometimes, the past would creep in unexpectedly. A phrase in a dream, a sound that reminded me of a harsh command. And I would pause, my heart pounding, only to be soothed by the gentle, reassuring laughter of Sam as he played in the next room. His innocent joy was a constant reminder that my fight was not just for me, but for him, too. At community college, I enrolled in courses that had once been only distant dreams. I chose literature and creative writing, subjects that allowed me to pour my soul onto paper. There, in the quiet corners of the library, I discovered that words had the power to heal. I began writing a journal, chronicling not only the horrors I had left behind, but also the small victories I experienced every day. A kind smile from a stranger, a compliment from a professor, even the simple pleasure of reading a new book. Each entry became a testament to my strength and a promise that I would never return to that life of submission. One crisp autumn afternoon, as I walked across campus with Sam bundled up in his favorite blue jacket, I met Daniel. He was a quiet, thoughtful guy with eyes that seemed to understand the unspoken sorrows hidden behind my smile. We struck up a conversation by chance, standing under a large oak tree whose leaves whispered secrets in the wind. Daniel spoke softly, almost hesitantly at first. "I noticed you seem to have a strength about you that's hard to miss, even when you're trying to hide it." His words, gentle yet piercing, stirred something inside me, a cautious hope that I could trust again. Over time, our conversations grew longer and more frequent. Daniel didn't ask for details about my past. Instead, he shared his own struggles and dreams, and together we found solace in knowing that the wounds of yesterday could eventually heal. At home, the scars of my previous life sometimes resurfaced in moments of doubt. I would catch myself flinching at sudden noises or feeling a pang of guilt when I recalled Alex's feeble apologies. There were nights when the silence of my room became too loud, and I could almost hear his voice whispering accusations that I had long internalized. In those moments, I would wrap my arms around Sam as he slept, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath, and remind myself that our future was brighter than the past I had endured. The community around me began to take notice of the changes. Rachel, a neighbor from the apartment complex, would often stop by with a warm smile and a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Alara, you've come such a long way," she said one afternoon as we sat on a small balcony overlooking a quiet street. Her words, full of genuine kindness, were like balm to my battered heart. I found that I was slowly beginning to open up, sharing bits of my journey with those who cared, without prying into the painful details. The support group I joined on weekends became a sanctuary, a circle of survivors and warriors who understood the language of pain and resilience. We exchanged stories over cups of herbal tea, our voices soft but resolute as we vowed to rebuild our lives one brave step at a time. Yet, even as I embraced these new beginnings, the shadow of the past occasionally loomed large. I received an unexpected phone call one rainy evening. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, trembling with a mix of fear and regret. "Alara, I know it's been a long time," Alex began, his tone unsteady. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I realize now how much I hurt you." His apology, coming so late, stirred up a whirlwind of emotions inside me. Anger, sorrow, and a lingering pity for the man who had once held my life in his hands. I listened in silence, my heart cold but unyielding, and when he finally fell silent, I replied quietly, "I appreciate your apology, but I'm not here to mend what you broke. I'm here to build something new." The call ended, leaving me with a strange mixture of relief and melancholy. I knew that forgiving him wasn't about forgetting the past, but about freeing myself from its hold. Mrs. Whitmore, too, made an unexpected reappearance. I encountered her at a local grocery store on a brisk winter day. She stood in the produce aisle, her eyes darting nervously as if she were searching for something, or perhaps for a way to escape her own consequences. For a fleeting moment, our eyes met, and I saw not the domineering, cruel woman I remembered, but a reflection of a broken soul haunted by her own choices. I said nothing, but in that silent exchange, I felt a sense of closure. I realized that the chains of their manipulation had no power over me anymore. They were remnants of a past that I had already left behind. As the seasons changed, so did my inner landscape. The long, cold winter gave way to the tentative warmth of spring, and with it came the promise of renewal. I started spending more time outdoors, finding solace in the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft murmur of a nearby brook. I began to paint, using colors that spoke to the rebirth of my spirit, a stark contrast to the drab hues of my previous existence. Each brushstroke was an act of defiance against the darkness that had once consumed me, a declaration that I was no longer a victim, but an artist reclaiming her palette. One evening, after a particularly long day filled with classes and work, I found myself at a small local art exhibit. The gallery was filled with vibrant canvases and sculptures that seemed to capture the essence of hope and struggle. As I wandered among the displays, I struck up a conversation with a fellow artist named Mia. She was passionate and outspoken, her eyes alight with creative fire. "You have a way of looking at the world that's raw and honest," Mia said, her voice warm and encouraging. "I think there's a story behind that look. A story of pain and triumph." I hesitated, the memories of my past flooding back. But then I realized that sharing my story might not only liberate me further, but also inspire others. Over the course of the evening, we talked about art, life, and the courage it takes to transform suffering into beauty. Mia's genuine interest gave me the strength to consider exhibiting some of my own paintings one day, pieces that captured the tumultuous journey from darkness to light. Despite these moments of progress, there were nights when I still grappled with the ghosts of my former life. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world was draped in a heavy silence, I would lie awake with thoughts of Alex's cold commands and Mrs. Whitmore's biting laughter echoing in my mind. Sometimes the memories were so vivid that I could almost feel the sting of their words, as if they were being whispered directly into my ear. In those moments, I would reach for my journal and write until my hand ached, pouring out every ounce of pain and anger. Gradually, these sessions became cathartic rituals, an exorcism of the past, allowing me to confront the demons that had long haunted me. I also began to explore new relationships, tentative and cautious at first. Daniel, with his steady presence, continued to be a beacon of hope. Our conversations deepened, moving beyond casual exchanges to the sharing of dreams and vulnerabilities. One rainy afternoon, as we sat in a small, cozy coffee shop, Daniel took my hand and said softly, "I see the way you look at the world, and I believe that your strength can light up even the darkest nights. You've been through so much, but you're not defined by it." His words resonated with a truth I had long forgotten, that I was not my scars, but the sum of my resilience and hope. As our bond grew, I found myself opening up to the possibility of love again, not the suffocating, conditional love of the past, but a gentle, nurturing connection built on mutual respect and understanding. Meanwhile, the repercussions of my divorce continued to ripple through the community. Whispers about Alex's crumbling reputation and Mrs. Whitmore's disgraceful behavior spread like wildfire. I learned that Mrs. Whitmore had been embroiled in legal battles of her own, her manipulative ways finally catching up with her. It was a bittersweet reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, eventually comes to light. I rarely heard from Alex after that final, fateful conversation, and while part of me felt a pang of sorrow for the man who had lost himself in his own darkness, I knew that his absence was a necessary step in my healing process. In the midst of rebuilding, I found solace in the small moments of everyday life. A shared laugh with a classmate, the comforting aroma of a home-cooked meal, the sound of rain tapping softly against my window. I began to see beauty in the mundane, understanding that every day held the potential for transformation. Even the act of cleaning my tiny apartment became a meditation, a way to symbolically wash away the remnants of the past and make space for the future I was crafting with my own hands. I continued to document my journey, not for the sake of reliving my pain, but as a beacon for others who might be struggling in silence. I started a blog where I wrote candidly about the highs and lows of reclaiming my life. The responses were overwhelming. Messages from strangers who saw their own stories in mine, who found strength in my words. Each comment, each note of thanks, reaffirmed my belief that our struggles could be the seeds of our greatest triumphs. As spring turned to summer, I decided to take a leap of faith and join a local community center that offered creative workshops. There, I met people from all walks of life, each with their own battles, their own scars, and their own stories of overcoming adversity. Together, we formed a tight-knit group, united by our shared desire to heal and grow. The workshops were filled with laughter, tears, and an unspoken understanding that we were all in this journey together. It was during one of these sessions that I unveiled a painting I had been working on for months, a vivid portrayal of a phoenix rising from the ashes. The room fell silent for a moment, and then, one by one, people approached me with words of admiration and encouragement. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that I had not only reclaimed my past, but I had also embraced a future filled with endless possibilities. In the quiet moments of reflection, I often revisited the memories of those dark days, not with bitterness, but with a sober acknowledgement of how far I had come. I understood that every painful experience had forged the strength that now propelled me forward. I no longer saw myself as a victim trapped in a cycle of abuse. Instead, I recognized the warrior within me who had fought tooth and nail for every small victory. The scars remained, but they were no longer symbols of defeat. They were medals of honor, each one a testament to my resilience. Life, I discovered, was not a linear path, but a tapestry woven with moments of pain, beauty, despair, and joy. Some days were harder than others, and there were moments when the weight of the past threatened to overwhelm me. Yet, in those times, I reminded myself of the gentle smile on Sam's face, the reassuring words of Daniel, and the unwavering support of those who had chosen to walk this journey with me. Slowly, the darkness that once defined my world began to recede, replaced by a soft, persistent light. I embraced my newfound freedom with an open heart, daring to dream again. I began to plan for a future that was not dictated by the shadows of my past, but illuminated by the promise of new beginnings. I enrolled in more courses, each one a stepping stone towards a career that would allow me to use my experiences to help others. I volunteered at local shelters, offering a listening ear and a compassionate heart to those who found themselves in situations similar to what I had once endured. Every act of kindness, every moment of shared understanding reinforced the truth that healing was not a solitary endeavor. It was a collective journey, woven together by the threads of human connection and empathy. As the days turned into months, I found myself looking back on my old life not with regret, but with a sense of gratitude for the lessons it had taught me. I had learned that the greatest strength lies in vulnerability, that acknowledging our wounds is the first step towards healing. I realized that I was capable of loving again, not just others, but also the person I saw in the mirror every morning. The woman who had once been broken was now standing tall, her spirit unyielding in the face of adversity. There were still moments when the past would knock on my door. A harsh word from an unexpected source, a memory triggered by a familiar scent, but I had learned to greet those moments with compassion rather than fear. I would remind myself that every scar was a story of survival, every tear a tribute to the battles fought and won. And in those moments, I would reach for my journal, penning down my thoughts as a reminder that I was, and always would be, resilient. Looking ahead, I can see a horizon filled with promise. I continue to nurture the relationships that have helped me heal, cherishing the bonds forged in the crucible of shared pain and triumph. I am slowly learning to trust the gentle rhythms of life once more, the soft murmur of a new friendship, the quiet comfort of a handwritten note, the hopeful greeting of a sunrise. Each day, I take a deep breath and remind myself that freedom is not just the absence of pain, but the presence of hope and possibility. I know there will be challenges ahead, days when the memories resurface and the weight of the past feels almost unbearable. But I also know that I have within me a strength that no one can take away. I have rebuilt my world from the ruins of my old one, brick by brick, with love, courage, and the unwavering belief that I deserve happiness. And as I walk this path, I carry with me the wisdom that our most painful experiences can be the catalyst for our greatest growth. In the stillness of the night, as I watch Sam sleep peacefully and listen to the distant hum of the city, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the second chance at life, for the people who have shown me kindness, and for the unyielding spark of hope that continues to burn within me. I have learned that healing is a journey without a final destination, a continuous process of growth, forgiveness, and rediscovery. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a victory over the darkness that once threatened to consume me. I am no longer defined by the cruelty of my past. I am defined by my resilience, my capacity to love, and my determination to create a future filled with joy, compassion, and endless possibility. As I continue to write my story, I do so with the firm belief that every word, every memory, and every moment of pain has led me to this point, a point where I can finally say, with absolute certainty, that I am free. Free to dream, free to love, and free to embrace the life I have fought so hard to build. And in that freedom, I find a peace that is both gentle and profound. A peace that whispers of a tomorrow where the sun always rises, and the light of hope never fades. In the aftermath of that life-altering day, I step out into a world that is both daunting and full of promise. I feel the cool night air wrap around me like a gentle reminder that I am finally free to be who I was always meant to be. Though the scars of my past remain etched in my heart, I now see them as badges of honor, proof that I had the courage to break free from a life of submission. The path ahead is open-ended, shrouded in uncertainty, yet glittering with possibility. Every step I take is a victory over the darkness that once consumed me, a quiet defiance against the tyranny of Alex and his domineering mother. While I forge ahead into a future that I am free to create, I know that somewhere in the shadowy corners of our old life, they are left to face the bitter consequences of their cruelty. Alex and his mother, now entangled in a web of their own making, suffer the heavy burden of guilt and isolation, their once iron grip on power slowly crumbling beneath the weight of truth. This journey has taught me a profound lesson. No one should ever be diminished or silenced, and our true strength lies in our ability to rise from our deepest wounds. If my story resonates with you, if it sparks even a flicker of hope, or inspires you to stand up for your own truth, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences. Let's start a conversation about reclaiming our lives and embracing the beauty of our resilience, because every voice matters, and every story deserves to be heard.